Welcome to the Productivity Podcast. Today we're joined by Paul Fruin, who's the Regional Sales Director at Arco. Hi Paul, how are you?
Hi Simon, I'm great, thank you very much, and thanks for inviting me along onto your podcast.
No, you're more than welcome. Thanks for coming on. So I think this one could be quite timely because hopefully we're near the end of pandemic. I won't say the end of COVID because I suspect it'll be around for a while than we are at the start. And you guys have, with what you do, played an integral part in supporting businesses throughout that. But before we find out a bit more about Arco, for those that aren't familiar, let's find out a bit more about you, Paul. How did you arrive at Arco? What's your career journey before that?
Cool, yeah, I'll give you a brief bio over the last sort of 40 odd years, which seems crazy, but I started out many moons ago in retail, mainstream retailing. I joined Marks and Spencer as a young management trainee straight from school at 18 and just worked through a number of different organisations in that period of time, from Debenhams to Asda, which was probably the most sort of career defining, on to companies like Argos, part of the acquisition of Homebase team and sort of leading teams in that environment, into the likes of Specsavers, Boots, and ended up with Arco 7 years ago. And the career's been incredibly varied: store management, field management, worked in corporate head offices as well, so quite a diverse career span across a number of different product groups. But bizarrely, many of the challenges that these businesses face are not unique to them. It's pretty consistent across the whole sector, whether that be food, general merchandise, or healthcare.
So a wide and ranging career, but with some similar themes weaved through, and one of those themes we'll talk about today involves Arco. So people listening may not be familiar with Arco, and I don't mean that as a disservice. They just might not recognise the name. I'm sure they'll recognise the products when you tell us about it. So what do you do at Arco, and what kind of things do you provide?
So Arco are a 150 plus year old family run business, still family run and based in Hull. We are experts in safety. So we have a joined up safety solutions oriented business, which is everything from selling sort of core PPE, including many of the face masks that people are wearing today in and around their general lives, through to some really quite technical kit, whether that for industries like oil and gas, working on oil platforms out in the North Sea, some significant customers in those sectors, the food industry, motor manufacturing, quite diverse. And we also do, the joined up element links into safety services proposition, where we do a lot of training, particularly for working at height, fall arrest equipment, and also confined spaces as well. All of that comes together under one overarching proposition. And we have a significant sales team based both in Hull and also out on the road. So we're all things safety.
The last 20 months has pretty much been all things safety. If you take face masks and screens and hand gels and sanitizers. So if you cast your mind back to the start of the pandemic, I assume the world of Arco went crazy because you already had a supply chain in the products that were quickly going out of stock as people struggled to get masks, as retailers struggled to get them for their colleagues. So how did that kind of first wave impact you and Arco?
Yeah, it's a great question. We like everybody, was taken a bit by surprise at sort of mid to end March, when this really kicked off last year. And there was a huge spike in demand from all sorts of organisations, and some businesses that we'd probably not traditionally done business with. So we haven't got a huge presence in the broader healthcare market like NHS, and certainly they came knocking on our door, but for a relatively limited SKU range. So that would have been basic type 2 and type 2R masks, which are the blue ones that you see people wearing now, disposable, up to P3s, and then some more significant respiratory equipment as well. And sanitizer really kicked off, and then other things like aprons, visors were probably the core products that we got huge demand for. Now, if there were there was a time where this was going to play to us. It was probably then. We'd literally just opened a 200,000 square foot extension to our national distribution centre in Hull. And we'd obviously also built stock in the run up to Chinese New Year. So and a lot of that stock comes from the Far East. So we were in as good a shape as we probably could have been from a stock perspective. So we made a decision about who we would prioritize in terms of supporting. That was our big core existing customer base, and anything that was health service related, so care homes, the NHS generally, and also that included the HSE and the HSENI in Ireland, where we also trade. So it was a challenging time, and then it was also about how we procured more stock, got more than our fair share, if you like, so that we ended up air freighting product into the UK, as well as our traditional over water procurement from a lot of our suppliers. We have a Xiamen office in China, so that helps with the procurement also and understanding the local market. But a lot of our product came from Wuhan, which was obviously where the outbreak was first identified. So it created a number of challenges for us. But I think because of our approach, the way we brought a core team together, key players in the business to act really in an agile way, make decisions quickly, enact them, and then move on it, I think helped us through the core of the pandemic in that first 3 to 4 months when it was really challenging for us and other businesses, and indeed frontline healthcare.
And I assume your kind of existing relationships with suppliers and some of those organisations that you've talked about there in terms of procuring stock must have put you in a very strong position, rather than those organisations that pivoted and decided they were going to sell face masks and sanitizer as a kind of byproduct of the pandemic, rather than have been in that world and that product group before.
Well, absolutely. And I think the key to that was the fact that as experts in safety, we really understand the market, we understand the efficacy of the products, but more importantly, the quality of the product, ensuring that everything had the right standards and accreditations on those standards. We've got a very good team of people who understand all of that. We product test ourselves. We have an in-house lab that does a lot of this testing. So we knew that we could go to market with a high level of confidence. And indeed, we did lots of checks on some of this other product that people were trying to profit from, and found that it was unworthy, unethical. And indeed, some of our customers did buy some of this from third party and found that essentially they'd wasted their money. We went through the right channels to ensure that we procured high quality stock. And there may well have been a premium to pay for that for some of our customers, but at the end of the day, they got a product that was fit for purpose.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I just casting my mind back as we were speaking, the market was flooded with people bulk selling masks that they could get hold of, bulk selling sanitizer, and lots of good examples as well. Let's not shy away from it. There was organisations that were breweries that turned into producing sanitizer. I think Brewdog did it for the NHS as well. So lots of great examples, but clearly lots of people with some very short-term profiteering ambitions, rather than, as you say, having the infrastructure and facilities to test properly, to weed out those products that might not, be worth the money that you're paying for, like you say.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the great thing as well is that there are a number of vendors who were manufacturing overseas that actually have built manufacturing plants in the UK. And so we've got vendors who can supply us from within the UK, great quality products. Again, arguably slight premium price, but it's on our doorstep. It means that we can work with them far more closely. And as you say, there's companies making things like sanitizer, at home, which meant that we didn't have to go overseas to get that, which also meant that procurement lead times were much shorter. So I think we were able to sort of protect most of our customers most of the time, and we definitely prioritised healthcare and probably food sector. Really, it was really important that we were able to have our food suppliers maintain production through the pandemic.
If only you did lorry drivers as well, Paul. That will be probably not make much sense if people listen to this in a couple of months. But topically, as we talk today, we are in the midst of shortage of petrol and a shortage of lorry drivers, which is going to cause all sorts of things over Christmas, is my guess.
The shortage of drivers creates a bit of tension for us. I think one of the things that and whilst talking transport, shipping is a huge challenge for us because we've seen the cost of overseas freight and shipping a container grow by almost 10 times in the last 20 months. So, March last year we were paying $2,000 to $2,500 a container to get product from China. It's now nearer $20,000 a container. That cost is significant, and you add that to oil has gone up significantly, and the cost of fuel from that perspective, and all other commodities, whatever it is, whether it's timber and its impact on pulp and therefore paper and packaging production costs. It's a situation at the moment from that point of view, almost the perfect storm coming together, which is putting challenge on the cost infrastructure within the business and how we pass that on to customers.
Yeah, I think all industries are seeing that and facing it. And like you say, ultimately, it's the consumer that will end up paying all of that cost at the point of purchase. Start of pandemic, clearly things went crazy. You were a good source of expertise and a really safe place to come for those products. As the pandemic went on, did things change? Did the type of products people were looking for and buying change, or actually has it remained relatively consistent with the generic PPE pieces?
It did change. The core product didn't. We didn't sort of move into new product areas, so it really was still around masks, sanitizer. Essentially, I mean, there were other elements, as I said, aprons and all disposable product and face coverings as well. We sort of pivoted into those, so the fabric coverings, which a number of our suppliers started to produce. By the time we got to July 20, as things started to ease up a bit, it died down. Did the pandemic, seasonally based. That meant that we started to reopen our business. We had furloughed our stores and closed those, the 45 that we have across the UK. We reopened those at the beginning of July and haven't had to reclose any of those even through the autumn lockdown. And we've just really been watching what our customers are doing ever since then, Simon, to understand those that are reopening, the timelines they're reopening. Still a lot of our customers, just as we are, working hybrid sort of working practices. Some are in the office, some are on the factory floor, some are still working from home. That's made it a bit difficult for our sales teams to really identify who to contact and where to contact them. But product didn't change much, and we found that we probably had to work harder to get into our customers to understand where they were at on their journey out of the pandemic as well. And I think 12 months on from that, we're still learning and understanding. It's never going to be the same as it was pre-pandemic. That's for sure.
No, I agree. And when the stores reopened, did again that kind of coincided, I assume, with the building trade getting back up and running and all the kind of clientele that would come in. Did they behave or shop in a different way, or was it kind of back to business as usual, just with the precautions that were in place at the time?
Yeah, I mean, we were clearly very strict around COVID regulations, to protect our customers, but arguably more importantly, our colleagues as well. So we put in stringent COVID protocols, a bit like many retail businesses did. So we absolutely were governed by those and governed by government guidelines. But I think most of the small trader trends were to get back to work pretty quickly. They were unfazed by protocols, so they just wanted to get back in and start earning. And they'd put on hold a few contracts. And we know what's happened in the last 12 months. The number of trying to get hold of a good tradesperson is very difficult. They're very active with all the extensions and small projects that people are doing in their homes. So yes, we've certainly benefited from that as people have seen the need for not just in those cases, not just PPE from a COVID protective perspective, but just a broader view and sense of awareness of the importance of PPE. So replacing, their footwear and some other workwear and things like that to make sure they're well protected. But that's only really been so in that smaller white van man type business that we serve through the stores. So.
Yeah, it's an interesting point because I think, again, most of our lives have been spent at home or in supermarkets, certainly in those early days. I think as a consumer, you became a lot more aware of the cleanliness of environment. So, we can all cast our minds back to whichever supermarket we shop in. There was the perspex screens between the cashiers and the tills, or dividing the self-checkouts. And I found myself kind of thinking, oh yeah, they've done a good job here cleaning those, or those white ones are a bit dusty. And because we were still learning about the virus and the pandemic and the way it spread, and was it contact, was it coughing, could you touch something and pick it up from that? I think although health and safety should and was probably at the top of everybody's list, I think it grew even more importance in the mind of the consumer. So, we both worked in retail, Paul, and as a store manager, you've got the compliance things, the health and safety things that you have to do because it's your name, in the dock, as they say, if it goes wrong. But I suspect that at that period took it to the next level.
Yeah, I think it did. And I think people were very aware of that. And our colleagues, as shoppers themselves, were very aware of that also. So, they did what was right for them, but what was right for the customer as well. I think one of the biggest things, which isn't really talked about that much, that probably helped was just the general point around personal hygiene and washing hands more frequently. So, things like hand wash sales did go up as well. So it wasn't just use of sanitizer. I think there was lots of advice at the time that probably just washing your hands more regularly was probably better than just relying on sanitizer. So the sanitizer was a backup. And I think everybody was far more diligent around that. So, you weren't picking up germs and spreading germs through door handles and those sorts of things in quite the same way as we perhaps were in the rather blasé fashion that we lived lives pre-pandemic. So, yeah, I think we had to respond in that way and make sure that everybody felt safe. So I think it was as much a reassurance thing as well in that regard. So, most of that has been removed now from our locations, and those sorts of restrictions are not in place in quite the same way. We encourage people to wear face coverings, but if they don't want to, we don't enforce it. We've not really suffered from challenges I think that the mainstream retailers have faced with customer behaviour with regards to face coverings and things. So we have lower footfall than that. And I think the relationship we have with our customers is far more respectful. They're account based generally, so they know us and they know what we do and how we do it.
Where does this all point then for the future of Arco? Has this changed kind of business plans moving forward? Has it just reinforced them? What kind of things are on your mind and are the business doing and looking at moving forward?
Well, I think the one big thing for us is that it's definitely opened up a healthcare market for ourselves. So the relationships that we've built with some of the NHS trusts around the UK has been helpful in that, and we'll continue to nurture those relationships. I think we'll see healthcare as a sector for us play a bigger part in our growth plans. Probably the single biggest change, though, is ways of working for our field sales teams. So we've got a team of 75 frontline account managers, business development managers, as we call them. They're regionally and territorially based around the UK and Ireland. Enjoyed a period of time working from home, and it's now encouraged them to get back in front of customers on their premises, where it's safe to do so, where our customers want to do that. But our customers too are working differently, so they've got many of their colleagues working from home, not back in the office. I think all organisations will have a hybrid approach to business.
I didn't catch that.
And I think we will we'll have to adapt to that. And all of the research that we've done and the companies that we work with in terms of trying to help us understand more about this, organizations like Gartner, who are an international company who have all sorts of data and insight on sales and sales organizations. I think, and it doesn't matter, I was on a webinar with those guys and international businesses all saying, they're still learning post-pandemic what this will look like. And I think it'll take us the next 6-9 months, even 12 months, to really understand what our business model looks like. Will it be more home-based? Will it be more telesales-based? We have stood up a new web platform in the last few weeks, which has been in development for a couple of years. That will certainly help our customers transact more online, self-serve online, which will hopefully then reduce some of the pressure on our sales teams so that they can go out and be more proactive on the sales journey. So I think there's a number of things happening in the organization and that will change the way we work, but I don't think we fully understand that, what proportion of our business will be face-to-face in front of a customer on their site versus what will be virtual calls. We've got some really good technology that we use, which is a platform called MediaFly, where we can surface lots of insight, sector-led, industry-led, commercial insight that we can take to customers to help inform them. We've just stood that platform up, which is very intuitive, allows us to sort of share information really well on a virtual conversation as well as a face-to-face conversation. So things like that are helping us, but it's still fairly early days. And given where we stand today with the final throes of furlough, hopefully that means that those few last businesses that have been had a lot of colleagues on furlough open up. That creates another level of confidence in the economy. Latest ONS stats indicate that the economy grew faster in the last quarter than was predicted. So hopefully that's another glimmer of hope in the market. But I think it's still uncertain in a number of ways. But I think we have to continually reinvent the way we approach, really inform customers about our unique selling proposition, what our overall proposition is in relation to experts in safety, and which is really quite unique in the market, that joined up end-to-end proposition that I talked about at the beginning. I think how we bring that to life should stand us in good stead going forward.
Yeah, no, I agree. So there's been some positives there with the kind of commercial relationships with some of the NHS trusts, and then clearly as everybody's getting to grips with, and I think you've mentioned the word kind of agile and flexible a couple of times as we've chatted, everyone's in that boat of trying to work out what it looks like, but actually being prepared to change things quickly as your clients want you to be on site or don't want you to be on site, or have a mix. So I think we're all working through it and learning for probably the foreseeable future, aren't we?
Absolutely, yeah. I think it's it's interesting. It's quite exciting in some ways. It's unnerving in others. But I think those that can be agile, can respond quickly, can adapt to the changing environment, will be the organisations that that succeed over the next sort of 12, 18 months and come out the other side of this. Because I think notwithstanding the other sort of cost challenges that we've got that I alluded to earlier, Simon, I think those will calm down over time. As the sort of playing field levels out, and we all come to terms with what this sort of new reality is going to be. So I think we feel in a strong position from that perspective, but just trying to weave our way through the current levels of uncertainty makes life challenging, but it's also what makes business interesting as well.
No, absolutely. Keeps you on your toes. So Indeed. It's been fascinating to chat, Paul. If people want to find out more about Arco, get in touch with you, is LinkedIn the best place, or the website?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, Paul Fruin, Frewin, and Arco is www.arco.co.uk, where you can find a lot about our history, but more importantly about sort of vast range of products that we sell in the safety world, and also other areas of workplace safety and products in that, everything from defibrillators to first aid kits to serious pieces of fall arrest equipment and the like. So yeah, it's been a pleasure talking to you, Simon. Thank you very much for having me on.
No, you're welcome, and we'll put those links in the show notes so people can find them easy. So last question from me before we wrap up is, what's the best bit of business advice you've ever been given?
Well, I think it relates to people and the importance of leadership, and being prepared to be a strong leader, but engaging with your colleagues so that you can really explain the why and purpose of what it is you're doing at any point in time and how it links back to your overarching business mission. And I think if you, on the back of that, treat your colleagues with respect, I think that's the way you take people on these sort of change journeys and the challenging times that we're facing. So I think absolutely links back to the way we as leaders interact with our teams.
Brilliant. Love that one. Paul, it's been a pleasure to catch up as always. Look after yourself and we'll speak soon.
Yeah, thank you very much.